General Croydon Woodbury, he joined the New Mexico National Guard in 1936. And more so than anything else, he was recognized for his leadership style. He earned 4 silver stars, he earned a Bronze Star, and a Purple Heart, along numerous other campaign medals. When he joined the 752nd Tank Destroyer Battalion, they first saw combat in May of 1944, and they continued to combat until the end of the war, and they were recognized as one of the units with the most consecutive days in combat during the European campaign within the 5th Army. He earned 2 of those Silver Stars, a Bronze Star, and a Purple Heart in that period of time. In reviewing Major General Woodbury's file, there's mention that he turned down the Distinguished Service Cross. And it's relayed that he did so based off of his insistence that his unit receive the recognition that they earned during the campaign. His unit was recognized with a Presidential Unit Citation, one of the first for a Tank Destroyer Battalion, as well as a Distinguished Unit Citation. This speaks to why he was called the Iron Major. It speaks to why he was selected to come out of the 804th and to take an increasing responsibility role within the 752nd. And this is how he was recognized by his leadership and by his men. But one of these Silver Stars citations highlight where he dismounted under enemy fire. He walked his tanks into position to provide counter fire, and then continued to develop the situation to where they could provide covering fire for the dismounted infantry to start conducting an envelopment, and ultimately captured 75 German prisoners of war. And during that engagement, that's where he was wounded. He earned the Silver Star and the Purple Heart. That's such a incredible story.
When the war started, he wanted to enlist. Well, they were offering light flight training at West Point. There was no Air Force yet. He thought that he probably would fail. He was on his way back flying. He thought, well, I've blown this, so I'm just going to show this guy that I do know how to fly, I do know something about it. So he turned himself upside down, the plane upside down, and flew all the way to the base after finishing West Point. Ended up in a unit of air sea rescue in the Philippines. When he came to New Mexico, he enlisted in National Guard. The Guard deployed. He looked around and tried to find a deployment that would take him to Vietnam. He knew about forward air controllers. The people who were looking for forward air controllers, he made a connection with them. He made the case that he was qualified. The images he had of when he was in Vietnam, when he was flying, and even when he was on the ground, it just embedded in his memory. And he had all kinds of images. And so he decided that he needed to paint them. He continued to paint Vietnam from those first years all the way up till the end. He basically felt himself to be a New Mexican and never looked back.
John, he loved the Army. I mean, he loved the Army. And he loved the National Guard, because he wouldn't have been an officer if it hadn't been for the OCS school that sent him to Santa Fe. The Berlin Guard unit was stationed at Fort Bliss, and they were using the Dusters, the twin Dusters, and they were three track units to a unit, and they were assisting the Marines on the DMZ zone. And they were dispatching as they were rolling up to give fire support for the Marines. He hit a landmine and it blew his track. And when he realized that the driver was pinned inside the unit, he went back and drug him out and got him away from it. That's when he received his first Bronze Star with Valor. the Vulcan came around, and he was really interested in getting that unit. So he was stationed with a bunch of General Electric technicians, and so they went to Vietnam with the technicians to field test this weapon and serviceability. John, when he came back, like I say, he was the Bronze Star with Valor, and then the Purple Heart, and then the Service for Vietnam ribbon. It was during the Tet Offensive of '69. They got overrun. They looked outside the bunker and they could see the General Electric technicians running from bunker to bunker trying to get in for safety. And so Lieutenant Martinez and my brother brought them into their bunker and closed the door behind them. And they gave them their vests, their flak vests, to wear inside there. And Lieutenant Martinez and him were standing outside with their service weapons and having a firefight with the North Vietnamese. They fired an RPG, and they fired it towards that bunker. So it skidded across the ground and came into the entrance of the bunker and hit my brother in the chest, and they detonated. And Lieutenant Martinez behind him lost both of his legs.
What he did talk about was the march and the diseases that people started to get, the beriberi, and from malnutrition, just the long march and the brutality that happened along the way. You know, men who couldn't make it or were too sick to make it or were shot or beaten. After he survived the march, then they had put him on these ships and packed them at the bottom of these container ships, and people were dying down there. And I believe at that point they were put on trains, went through Korea and ended up in Harbin, China, and then this camp called Mukden, which was outside of Harbin. It was cold. They couldn't bury their dead. They just had to keep them through the winter in some area because the ground was too cold. And then he was assigned to that plant that was outside where they lived. He said that those prisoners who worked in that plant did their best to sabotage, occasionally just to slow down the works. One day, he said, all of a sudden the Japanese guards were gone. They were just, all the Japanese presence was one morning, they disappeared. And maybe the day after is when the American planes started coming over and dropping supplies. And Dad always talked about that morning or day. That's what he experienced, but he had faith, he had family, and he had a home to return to, and he went on being grateful for the rest of his life, and he made his life the best he could.